What's up, guys? Game time once again. In front of you, I have something brand new to unveil for the new year. The first commander deck I built around a new commander in forever. I can't actually think of the last time that I put together a commander deck around a brand new commander. I think maybe the last time was Brea, perhaps? It's been forever. Pretty much all of my designs have been around old and established commanders, and this deck actually is an outgrowth from a Canadian Highlander deck that Nate Prodzik developed, and I was helping to tune. And he actually came to me a couple of days ago and said, hey, I thought about maybe adapting the Canadian Highlander deck over to Commander to see how it plays. And obviously, the Canadian Highlander deck that we're currently playing is a 5-color creation, and that left us thinking about what kind of commanders might fit well in that spot. And I believe Nate is the one, actually it certainly wasn't me, Nate was the one who suggested this guy, Kenrith the Returned King, who was just printed in Throne of Eldraine. And I guess he's sort of like a special guy. When I went to go look at them, it seems like there's only promotional versions of him. But oh my god, what a crazy, insane card. One of the criteria that I always set forth for the commanders that I think are top tier are commanders that have the ability to flourish in high and low mana situations, particularly in high mana situations, because usually if your deck is built correctly, you'll have plenty of things to do at 1 and 2 mana. And the times when you actually get screwed are when you have way too much mana and your commander doesn't provide any type of card advantage. Commanders like Grand Arbiter Augustine and Derevi fit into that category. They're very powerful early in the game, but you can often, if you don't draw them in conjunction with other cards that they either enable or that make them better, you're kind of just left with a bunch of mana and nothing else to do. And Kenrith, of course, fits the bill perfectly. He's a very, very solid body of 5 mana, 5/5, with only a single white in the casting cost. It means that he's extremely easy to get into play with all the generic mana that these decks produce. And he has at least 3 very relevant abilities. Possibly the top ability can matter sometimes. It can be very, very powerful if you're taking out a Planeswalker, because the ability to just come through with haste and trample can often mean the difference between taking out something like an opposing Teferi or a Jace or something. But I'd say that ability is definitely B tier. And then the bottom ability, well, completely nuts in the right archetype, like a Reanimator archetype, unfortunately is not very good in this deck. This deck only runs 2 creatures, and it's rare that they would die, given how durable both of them are. However, you'll notice it says put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. So unfortunately, you can only reanimate their guys under their control, which, I mean, I guess maybe you could steal them with treachery or shackles, but it only really works with reanimation type effects. That said, super burly guy, easy to spam and cast over and over again, particularly with all the colorless mana in the deck, and enables all 5 colors. And so the rest of the deck is pretty typical 5-color control. This is quite similar to the Canadian Highlander deck, but the difference being that in Canadian Highlander, because of the points list, there's a number of cards that are banned in Commander that you're actually able to use. Foremost among them is Library of Alexandria and Balance and Tinker. We're not actually using Library in the Oath deck at the moment, but we are using Tinker and Balance, which of course are both banned in Commander for good reason. And but in place of that, you get a broader spectrum of stuff that would normally cost prohibitive amounts of points in Canadian Highlander, including the ability to play with both Mana Crypt and Soul Ring. I think Mana Crypt is a 4-point card. Soul Ring is a 4-point card. You also get the ability to play with Strip Mine, which is now a 3-point card. In addition to everything else, you get Mana Drain and Enlightened. Well, I guess Enlightened Tutor was just made 0, but Mystical Tutor and Mana Drain both cost 1 point. And what else is in here that costs more than 1? I actually don't know if any of these other cards. Oh, Mind Twist is 1 point as well. So certainly, if this deck were built in Canadian Highlander, it would be over the limit. But that said, it is pretty easy to just run the same basic strategy. You're kind of just playing a stall and control game, and your long-term goal or short-term goal, depending on how the game unfolds, is to get Oath of Druids into play, and there's a million ways to do that with all of the tutors and so on. And you play Oath of Druids, and either they have creatures to begin with, or you can even fetch up the Forbidden Orchard, and you mill a whole bunch of your deck, which activates some of these amazing flashback cards like Savin's Reclamation and potentially Mystical Teachings. And you oath up one of these practically indestructible creatures, either Sphinx of the Steel Wind or the Mighty Empyrean Archangel, and you go to work on them with those guys at that point. And yeah, usually closing out the game is pretty trivial at that point because you're able to get those gigantic creatures into play really, really quickly. And the deck has a backbone of pretty much all of the best cheap planeswalkers in the format, in the form of Wrenn and 6, Teferi, Dak Faden, Oko, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and then at the higher end you've got Teferi and Tezzeret the Seeker. But yeah, pretty straightforward deck. We're still tuning it. This is still a work in progress, so I'm going to say that, or I should say show the deck with that caveat. That said, it feels like we're kind of honing in on what feels like a good list. Oh yeah, it's got Nahiri as well. I just added this. I'm not sure about that, as well as Sylvan Library. And the mana base, very, very straightforward. It's running all of the revised dual lands as well as most of the shock lands, in addition to some more recent things like the Lotus Field, which has proven to be a phenomenal card in decks with Winter Orb and Tithe, as well as Mystic Sanctuary, which is basically the best basic land, or the best non, I don't know, single land type thing, fetchable thing ever produced. This land is just utterly insane, and it continues to surprise me how often this card allows you to just win the game with a fetch land, because you can fetch Mystic Sanctuary and suddenly cast, I don't know, get a Mana Drain or get a Demonic Tutor or cast a Yawgmoth's Will a second time. Or I guess you can't do that. Yawgmoth's Will exiles itself, but it's not a good example. But there's plenty of other things. Maybe cast a second Factor Fiction. It just allows you to double up on all sorts of different effects without even being a creature. And with Deprive, you can recycle the Mystic Sanctuary over and over and over again and lock your opponent out of the game in the same style as Forbid, with only costing 1 card a turn instead of 2. Anyway, I've played about maybe a dozen or so games with the deck so far. Actually lost the first game today just due to I was super, super sleepy and made a pretty dumb mistake that wound up costing me the game. So I'm not going to show that game because it's too embarrassing. But I did have, I wanted to show one of the very, very first games that I played with this deck, I think the second game, and then I'm going to show a series of 3 games in subsequent videos against a pretty competitive mono blue Urza deck. But let's start with this one first, and that was against, let's see here, this guy, Nobel Ninja. This is a guy I've played before, plenty of times in the past actually. Let's bring it up. All right, first game, the debut game with the Oath Kenrith deck. Here we go. This actually wasn't the debut game. It was the second game I played with it. But as you can see, the deck wanted to flex its muscles, and I'm up against Karametra, the God of Harvest, once again. That was I think the title, the subject of my last video actually. And I actually made a reference in the last video when I was playing against Karametra, mentioning about, do I even know or do I understand anything about ramp? And that's actually it's a reference to a note that somebody left in the comments years ago, where I think I was actually playing against another Karametra deck with maybe my Nin deck, and someone wrote in the comments that I know nothing about ramp, because clearly Karametra is the most powerful ramp commander in the entire universe, and by denigrating it, I clearly did not understand how good the card is. But it looks like I've learned my lesson, and I think I actually have figured out ramp. As you can see, I've started this game with Soul Ring and Mana Crypt and Copy Artifact. So I think I actually have a mastery of that concept in the game now. It's just an absolutely disgusting hand. Mana Crypt into Soul Ring, into Demonic Tutor. And actually the version that's I've got right here is slightly different than the one I was showing at the beginning of the video, because it's been tuned a little bit. You'll notice it's got Ancient Grudge. These are some holdovers from the Canadian Highlander deck, where you don't have as many tutor effects. So playing with something like Quiet Speculation and some flashback cards makes more sense to handle a variety of threats. But I'll give you guys a couple seconds to figure out what you Demonic Tutor for. I'm sure Nate knows exactly what it is. Figured it out? Yeah, it's this card. Because, ramp. All right, Nobel Ninja plays a Skull Clamp, which isn't even ramp at all. All right, let's see what happens here. I take 3. All right, I just put 2 Gilded Lotuses into play here, no big deal. Cast Preordain. There's 2 lands there. I'm going to put 1 on the bottom and then play the Flooded Strand. Unfortunately, I'm 1 mana short of being able to play my commander on turn 2 with whatever this is, 12 mana in play. Yeah, no big deal. He plays an elf. All right, Go get a Watery Grave. Oh, Polluted Delta, that's handy. Alright, so down comes Kenrith. And because I've got 8 mana here available, I elect not to give him haste to attack. There's kind of no reason to. It's pretty much the same because of the ability for him to pump himself. It's just pretty bonkers. Alright, so I had the opportunity to go and pay 8 mana to make him a 9/9. And then that'll allow me to attack once and then twice. But I figured, I don't really know if he's got Condemn or Swords to Plowshares or something, and that could really backfire. I think it's just better to take the safer route. Draw 2 cards during end step. Force a negation. Look at this, ridiculous. Just stack my deck a little bit. Put 2 free counter spells on top. All right, send out Tithe. All right, well, Kenrith gets to attack here. I'm just going to Life from the Loam and put 2 more lands there. So I pretty much have his next turn completely wrapped up, even if he does cast his mighty Karametra, and that does nothing, unfortunately. So end step. Pay a bunch of mana. God, look at that. Yeah, it's an 11/11. What is that, turn? So that was turn 4. And no reason to judge Life from the Loam. But he's completely tapped out. I mean, his turn 4 amounted to playing his commander. And on this turn, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I could put 7 more counters onto this thing and smash for 18 and kill him with commander damage and 2 attacks. Yeah, pretty ridiculous. I mean, obviously, this is a completely aberrant 99th percentile draw, but pretty demonstrative of just how disgusting this commander can be with just lots of mana and itself. Either a gigantic card drawing engine or killing the opponent or some mixture of it. And it's even got this crazy white mana ability. Target player gains 5 life, which makes it almost impossible to kill you if you've got a ton of white mana as well, or just a ton of mana in general. Anyway, not really a particularly contested game, but I wanted to show that as a quick little demonstration of what the deck is capable of doing. And the next games that I'm going to put up are quite a bit more pitched battles. So stay tuned for those. See you guys soon.